Welcome back to On the Spot. I'm your host Sharmeen Thomas, coming to you from Brisbane. This is the last episode in the mini-series Unfiltered Realities. And today we're talking about something that's hitting people really hard. It's the cost of property and building. In the last couple of episodes, we've talked about how the war is impacting people and industries here in Australia, in Brisbane. We spoke to a travel expert, we spoke to a mental health expert, and we even spoke about finance and small business. My guest for today is Ali Mohammed. He is one of Brisbane's most premium builders with a background in real estate as well as chartered accountancy. So we're going to deep dive today and pick his brains on how things are affecting the building industry. We're going to talk a little bit about design and trends, because don't we all just love that? How is it that people can really protect themselves in these volatile times? And of course, my favorite segment is what we'll end with, and that's the rapid fire. Ali, welcome to the studio.
Hi, Sharmeen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, Ali. Ali, for anyone meeting you for the first time, what is it that you do? What are the kind of projects that you take on?
Sure. So I run a company called INDOZ Constructions. We're a Brisbane-based custom home, luxury home builder. My background actually is slightly not traditional when you speak to a custom home builder who started off with a tool belt and a carpenter turned builder. My background is actually more accounting and finance. A lot of that accounting and finance background was exposed to property. I started small property projects back when I was 21, and that sort of slowly turned from one property to two properties to three, and we're doing renovations, new build, subdivisions, whilst I was still running a traditional accounting career, if you want to call it that. That slowly turned into property development. Property development turned into running my own building company. And now we specialize all in Brisbane, servicing a very specific demographic of clients who want something that the bigger builders can't give. So we specialize in homes that range between $1.3 and $2.5 million. Clients who need something that's bespoke, that's suited to their forever home sort of agenda or lifestyle. Clients who need somebody who's a good project manager, not just a good traditional builder, and somebody who's a little bit versed in more than just getting the project from A to B. And there's a real project management aspect to what we do.
There's obviously so much behind it, but again, just reflecting a little bit on your journey, what was the turning point in all of this? I mean, you are a rare mix of finance, real estate, and of course building now. But was there a particular moment when you can be like, I'm done and this is what I want to do? Sure.
I don't know if it was as much a moment as it was a fairly slow transition. People that don't know me, they sort of see this whole accountant turned builder, and how did that happen? And it is pretty rare to see. But for me, it was actually many years. In my teenage years, I was very interested in property and construction. My parents actually ran a building and construction import business, so I was exposed to building and construction in some ways from when I was really young. I always knew that I wanted to own my own business, and property wasn't something I went out to choose, but I didn't go out to choose.
It came to you in your genes.
Yeah, it was a little bit instinctive more than purposeful. And to answer your question more directly, how did that transition happen? It really happened slowly. Over a course of a decade, I was lucky enough to be exposed to people and projects that were in property, slowly building up a portfolio and exposure to different types of properties as well. Like I said, we were initially was buying a unit and then renovating it, selling it. And that turned into building new homes with a traditional builder, seeing how they did it well and how they didn't do it well. And it got to a point where I knew the side hustle, if you want to call it that, was giving me so much more fulfillment and financial freedom that having a job was almost holding me back. And about 8 years ago, I pulled the pin and said, okay, we're going to go out and become a full-time property developer.
That's right. And anything like that takes guts.
It takes guts.
At whatever scale. I mean, I'm actually a bit surprised you're calling it a side hustle because, I don't think builders are built that way.
Yeah.
But honestly, Ali, good on you for that. I just want to move the conversation a little bit to what exactly is going on in Brisbane right now, like with the war in the Middle East, and there's, your global supply chains are affected. There's inflation, which is affecting every single person. So with all of this, how is it affecting you? How is it affecting your industry?
It's a pretty scary time to be in the industry, I'll be honest. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who don't make it through. It's almost like we went through this post-COVID where there was this influx of building activity from all this government fiscal stimulus they threw out that just created a flurry, right? The flurry that we couldn't really support in terms of the people that are in like the trade base in the industry just couldn't support the amount of construction that went on. We're basically seeing it again. I think this time around it's got a few more prongs to it. Not only do we have people with a lot of appetite and capital to build homes. Just families have picked up all this equity through property growth over the last 5, 10, 15 years that want to spend it in a new, beautiful home. You've got the Olympics and what that's creating in terms of infrastructure and the demand on people to construct that infrastructure. It's wild. And I think a lot of people hear about this in the news sense, but don't quite appreciate that there's a real impact on folks like us, the small to medium-sized builders, that we're playing with the same pool of people that the likes of Hutchies are playing with. And when there's too much demand, all of a sudden the costs start to go up. That was the base case until 2 months ago we started seeing all this geopolitical instability and the war in Iran. That's really put a rocket in terms of constricting supply and still having the same amount of demand. So we're seeing, to give you a real world example, we're seeing, I personally saw somewhere between 25 to 30 emails in the last 6 to 8 weeks from suppliers all saying the same thing. Hey, fuel levy, costs going up, we need to increase our costs. And the range has been from 3.5% to up to 20-25%.
Wow. What are the biggest areas where you've seen the cost increase as far as construction goes?
It's almost equally widespread across all supply. Labor is one thing, and labor we can hold off a little bit longer because it's the people that are doing it. They're not as impacted day to day until they realize that, hey, their lives are more expensive to run.
Until they walk into Coles or Woolies
exactly.
the cost of butter has doubled today.
Exactly. So that's happening. But what's happened straight away is cladding's gone up, cabinetry's gone up, steel's gone up, timber's gone up, machine hire has gone up. And I was having this conversation with a client a few weeks ago about how easy it is to interpret the news and not really appreciate that what you see on the news is actually happening boots on ground for someone like us. So I think it's going to be a really interesting and for many painful next 6 to 12 months because we've still got pressure on fuel. The fuel's gone down a little bit, but we haven't seen anybody unwinding any of their fuel-related excises. Everybody racketed up over the last 2 months, but nobody's starting to unwind.
That's right. And in terms of how this translates to your clients, right? So are they reducing the scope of their bills? Where are they cutting corners? Where are you kind of seeing that in terms of
I think it's not been long enough yet to really see people changing behaviors. Because, when building a house is a fairly time-consuming thing. So some of the clients that we're building for at the moment, the decisions have been made, the financial commitments have been made. We wear much of the pain as a builder because there's fixed-price contracts. But there's no doubt that I think people across the board are going to have to start making some compromises and pull back. If I look back to houses we were building 10 years ago, and in the same area, in fact, in the same street, we're still building a house. And you compare what we built 10 years ago to now, these things are 20% bigger. Yep. There's more marble. there's more timber, the ceiling heights are higher. Everything's just people want more and expect more.
Yep.
So, we have fallen into this trap as a society of wanting more, and people can afford more, so they get more, no problems. But some of that will potentially have to unwind a little bit. That said, I think, if I put my economist hat on, I think there's still
your finance
heaps of
hat on.
capital in the system. There's people who have made, particularly business owners and property owners have made a lot of money just having equity that's just grown on them over the last decade, which I still think will position itself well for people like me who service those people.
That's right.
We still keep building good houses and we still keep doing what we want to do, and as long as there's people out there want to use our services, we're happy to build it 20% bigger with marble and timber.
You've built your reputation as a boutique builder. You spoke about marble and about how spaces and design has evolved and changed over the last 10 years. What are some of the really hot trends right now in space and design that either you're seeing or that you're actually creating?
Great question, actually. I think at a fundamental level, everybody wants bigger. What used to previously be a cupboard inside of a laundry to put, kids' bags now has turned into a mudroom. Right, with cabinetry.
You might want to fit a body in there.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're rich enough to fit one, go for it. So bigger at a fundamental level, but the level of finish that we're doing now, and some of that actually has not just been market adjustment. Some of it is we're building better houses. What we're building 10 years ago versus now, we're a more boutique and we build nicer things, and we enjoy building that. But there certainly is more natural finishes. There's more stone. Whether it be stone cladding on the outside or natural stone marble bench tops. Now, what used to be 20 mil thick bench tops, now people want 60, 80 mil thick bench tops. Appliances, we were doing Fisher & Paykel Westinghouse appliances 15 years ago. Now everybody wants Miele and Bosch. In fact, we were about to do a house with a Gaggenau set of appliances, and if you look up the prices for that, it's out of control. So there is more natural finishes and there's more size. That's probably where I put it. Actually, one more thing I'd say is there's a lot more curves in what we do. Straight walls are a lot cheaper to build than curved walls, and people want curved walls. There's a real Palm Springs.
One of your landmark styles, I'd say.
Yeah. And I think there's also a trend in more of a Palm Springsy Mediterranean feel to the houses we're building. What we're building 10 years ago had a real Hamptons flair. That's gone down a fair bit.
I think even your own houses from about 6 to 8 years back looked quite different from what they look now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've followed trends. In some cases, we've made some trends as well. There's a couple of houses we've built, and we look around town and we say, hey, people are kind of replicating this, which is like a huge compliment. I don't get upset about it. But yeah, curved walls are a lot more expensive than straight walls, and everybody wants curved walls.
So good. Ali, just coming back a little bit, actually more to kind of wrap up this discussion, but with all the volatility in the market right now, what is it that you can advise to customers as far as building is concerned? Like, what do they need to watch out for? How can they protect themselves, watch their costs?
Sure. I can't speak for the bigger builders, but certainly from a customer who's looking for a custom builder, there's a couple of key things to consider. Building, especially custom home, it's not a short-term stint. From when we meet a client to when they commit to when we go through a 4 to 6 month planning process, and this is all before we even started building. And the building journey is another 12 to 15 months. You're talking a 18 to 24 month relationship. So you really, at a very basic level, need a builder that you actually like and get along with. And there's a bit of a two-way relationship to this. When we're meeting customers and deciding whether we want to take on certain projects, we want clients that really align with our values. But more importantly, you have to find a builder who aligns with yours.
It's almost like a short-term marriage.
It really is a short-term marriage. And
you're
you know
building
what?
a house, it's not a home.
It's even worse because a short-term marriage, you can actually sign the divorce papers and leave. But this one, once you sign the document, you've got to stay until the end, right? Yeah. So it's so important you have somebody you actually like as a person. And generally, likability is linked to trust.
Correct. But in saying that, contracts are really important.
Absolutely. But contracts are so complicated.
Yep.
There's, if you read our specification documents, they're pages and pages long. So it's very easy for a builder who doesn't mean well to sneak in things, and then you only find out later on during the process. So find somebody you trust and you actually like. Find somebody who has done what you're actually trying to achieve. If you come to me and said, "Hey, Ali, build me a 10-story building in Newstead, or let's do 75 townhouses," I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
Now, it's tempting if you're a builder who doesn't have a lot on to say yes to things and say, we'll be okay. But those builders are the ones that really stumble through the build process. So you want to find somebody who has delivered what you want. Because it's also tempting to go for the cheapest, and often the guys who haven't done what you're trying to achieve will go for it because they want to win the job. There's a fine balance between cheap, expensive, and value for money. So you got to find somebody who's done what you want them to do. Also find somebody that has got skin in the game, and it's not just about a one-off relationship. We're building 2 houses at the moment for customers who are return customers. So when we're approaching a new relationship and even executing on a build, we're always thinking about like not just that build and how we finish it and get out of it. It's about like how do we keep the customer happy? How do we build a reputation that we actually see some fruits of, not just in that relationship, but in the conversations that person will have. So find somebody who cares about that. None of those things are. You alluded to the contract. The contract is
beyond the contract.
It's way beyond the contract.
Yep.
And sure, if it all gets legal, you've got a contract to fall back on. But by that stage, everybody's lost if that's where you're going.
That's right. If we had to kind of summarize this, and if you had to give me one rule of thumb for anyone planning to build a house in the next 12 to 24 months, what would that be?
Geez, it's hard to get one rule of thumb.
The biggest rule of thumb.
I think you've got to, and I can again speak for custom, not the big builders. If you go to a custom home builder, you've got to understand the process. And I think if you walk into a display home in a big display village, the process there is very different to a custom. There's some pros to that model. There's some huge cons, and I'm all for that because it services a certain demographic of client. But a custom model is very different. The planning process takes longer. The execution sometimes is not as predictable. Things go wrong on site. We have to pivot. We have to compromise. Sometimes the client has to compromise. So you have to understand that process and find somebody who's willing to be transparent about the good and the bad. When I sit down with the clients at the very beginning, I say, hey, this process, you're going to have to appreciate that at some point, I'm going to need you to compromise on something. I'm going to give a lot, but there's something at some point you're going to have to give as well. And you find somebody who's honest enough to say that up front, that this isn't all roses and chocolates, because the industry is hard enough to be in already. And then custom home building is even harder than a traditional box-on-box build. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I'd put it.
It's a few thumbs over there,
facets,
Ali,
yeah.
But like you said, it's hard to bring it all into one single point. But that brings us to now my favorite part of the podcast, which is the rapid fire. So that is quick answers, a few words, a sentence or two. So we'll see if this.
I'll try my best.
We'll see how you fare. All right, are you ready?
Hit me.
Okay, let's go. The most common budget mistake people make.
Under budgeting, and also not fully understanding whether what they want aligns with the budget. Sometimes what they want is here and the budget is there, and making sure you find somebody that's honest enough to tell you that aligns with that. And if you need to adjust up front, you adjust up front. And sometimes, we have a bit of both. We have clients who are very realistic, and sometimes we have to be quite honest with them.
What is something clients should never cut corners on?
Quality. Absolutely. I will go blue in the face trying to explain to a customer why they should spend more money on something, because it's better quality, more practical, and it's going to have more longevity.
One upgrade that's always worth it. Don't say curved walls.
Yeah, one upgrade that's worth it. I'd say joinery, so cabinetry. A big chunk of what we do involves beautiful joinery, and I think that it's like the jewelry in the house.
Yeah.
Is probably how I would put it. So I try not to cut too many corners on the amount of cabinetry we put in and the type of cabinetry we put in.
I think if you do that, you kind of save on buying furniture. So,
in
a manner of
depends.
speaking,
Yeah, depends. Depends on how much money you're giving me to spend on cabinetry.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What's a trend you would avoid at all costs?
Open showers. So wet areas are really susceptible to mold and being a bit dark. So I try and make my wet areas big, but also position our showers in a way that either fully enclosed, or if they're open in a way that water doesn't tend to splash out. It's very specific, but yeah.
Oh, it's crazy specific, but it's so important.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't.
There's so many things like that.
Normal people would not think of it, but
Yeah.
someone like you would. But that's why we need great builders, right?
Yeah.
If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
Communication. That honestly, most of what we do, most of what we win as builders, stems from good communication, or a customer having had a bad experience with communication before. And it's our hardest thing, because the communication is not limited to our communication with the client. It's actually a whole much bigger layer of communication between our subcontractors and us.
Yeah.
And when that is not very strong, everything else kind of falls apart. So I spend most of my time really working on quality contractors and making sure our communication and quality is right.
What's a dream feature in a high-end home, many of which you do build?
Big tall ceilings. Tall ceilings and natural light. That fundamentally, changes the vibe of the house. You can have an amazing house, but if it's got inadequate natural light and not very tall ceilings, it can change the vibe altogether. So I try and go as high as I can, and if a window can be a little bit bigger than it already is on the plan, I make it bigger.
What is the best compliment that a customer has given you?
I think when the customer comes back, that's, you can't get any bigger than that.
Actions speak louder
Yeah,
than words.
absolutely.
If you had to name 3 smart design choices that add long-term value to a house, what would that be?
I don't know if I have 3 very specific ones, but I generally find practicality and longevity. All the houses we're building are for families. Very, very rarely we build for investors. And if it's an investor, he or she is looking to sell to a family. So they've got to be family-friendly layouts. There's no point having golf simulators and bowling alleys and things that you just know families either can't afford or don't really care for. So I try and make our layouts as practical as possible. And also just making sure that, because a lot of people that live in our houses, that is not their first home. So they've lived in a few houses before they get to what we create.
Mistakes they don't want to make.
So they know there are certain things that you go, well, they could have done it cheaper, but they didn't. And they appreciate and they pay for that.
Perfect. And Ali, last one, the one that I love to end with, if you could own a hashtag, what would that be?
#ISA Constructions.
That's it. Thank you so much for joining us, Ali,
Thanks for having me.
and sharing your insight and views with us.
Love it. Thank you, Sharmeen.
Thank you.